Welcome to the Stop Down Photography Podcast, episode 114. I'm Scott Davenport. In this episode, I have the photo workshop lineup for 2024, and I'm excited. Hi, welcome. Thanks for joining. I'm glad to be back with you for another chat about photography, this shared passion of ours. And in today's episode, let's take one more step on our never-ending journey of photography. There is no better way to grow as a photographer than to immerse yourself in photography. And there's no better way to do that than to take part in a photo workshop. I've held that to be true from my earliest workshop experiences, both as an instructor and as a student. I always exit a workshop invigorated about photography, my passion rekindled, and with new ways of looking at photo subjects and new processing techniques to try. So I'm thrilled to share with you my workshop lineup for 2024. Let's get to it. If you enjoy the podcast, please share it with a friend on social media with your camera club, and if you can, leave a rating and a review for the podcast. You know it helps. iPhone and macOS users can rate directly in the Apple Podcasts app. You can also leave a rating via the web at podchaser.com. Links in the show notes. Way back in episode 3 of this podcast, I spoke about workshops. And if you missed that one, I'll put a link in the show notes for that too. And just like I said at the top, as well as back in episode 3, workshops really do elevate your photography. I love hosting them. I love attending them as a student. And I wish I had more time to do more workshops. I've got some coming up. I actually have 2 workshops still left this year, November of 2023. Both are in Oregon, and our groups are already making preparations for some seascape photography along the Oregon coast. This is an exciting time. You're a few weeks out from a trip. You're deciding what gear to bring. You're getting prepped. You're thinking about all those locations, and I love this. I love this part. It's almost as good as being there, almost. And there is last-minute availability in both workshops, one space each. There's the Oregon Coastal Workshop running November 7th through the 10th. This one's in Central Oregon, great beaches, lighthouses, and a small excursion to one of my favorite little secret spots inland with a beautiful creek. And then there's Bandon Beach and Beyond. This is November 13th to 16th. More along the southern coast of Oregon, based in Bandon, you're home to towering sea stacks, and you can walk right up to these, interact with them, touch. It's a phenomenal beach, and the whole southern corridor of Oregon's coast is great. So if you can't wait until 2024 to get on a workshop, go check these out. Once again, links in the show notes. Of course, links in the show notes. But let's talk about 2024, the lineup for 2024 workshops. I'm hosting 3 workshops next year, and the links for all of these will be in the show notes. You don't have to remember all the details that I'm about to share. Just you hear something that piques your interest, go, ooh, yeah, that one sounds like it's the workshop for me. Hit the show notes. You'll find the links to everything. All the details are on the webpage, and it's also where you can reserve a space. First up in 2024 is Bryce Canyon National Park in February. So a Bryce Canyon winter workshop. February is a wonderful time there. I mean, it changes the landscape so much. A blanket of fresh snow. It's draped over these oranges and reds of the hoodoos and the canyon valley. You've got some evergreens interspersed in that. It really is magical, and it's not crowded at all. I went to Bryce this past February to scout for this workshop, and I had several areas of the park completely to myself, and that makes for a really great landscape experience, both as a photographer and just as a landscape lover. You really just get to be there without any distractions, without any elements, just you and nature. And the photography, of course, is wonderful. We stay in Bryce Canyon City, which is just a few minutes from Bryce Canyon itself. So in between our location shoots, we're within easy reach of home base. Grab a little rest, work on photos together, hang out, talk shop. There's several restaurants in town too. I'm taking only 5 photographers on this workshop. So it's a small group. You get ample one-on-one coaching in the field as well as with post-processing. So if a winter workshop in the stunningly beautiful Bryce Canyon sounds good to you, this is running February 13th to 15th, 2024. And I recommend arriving the evening before on February 12th. Our workshop is a full 3 days in Bryce. We're starting first thing on February 13th. The cost is $1,495. Again, limited to 5 photographers, and a couple of those spaces have already been claimed. So the workshop availability is shrinking on that one. Check the show notes. Bryce Canyon, February 2024. Next on the roster is the Big Sur Experience. Yeah, Big Sur, California in April. There is a reason I return to Big Sur again and again. It's beautiful. It has tons for the landscape photographer. Rocky coastlines, majestic trees, beautiful beaches. Some of them are just very rocky. Some of them are sandy beaches peppered with rocks. You have fog and mist adding to the ambiance. And in April, it's temperate and not overcrowded. Yeah, you're detecting that theme, me picking places in certain seasons and times that give the best combination of beautiful landscapes without the droves of people. Now, our headquarters for the Big Sur Workshop are in Carmel, California, and that is the perfect spot because it puts us within just like 30 minutes of everything from the Monterey Peninsula, Point Lobos State Park, Soberanes Point, the famous 17-mile drive, Bixby Bridge, that bridge, the one you see in all the car commercials, the classic on California Route 1. And Carmel itself is a picturesque town. And maybe we'll take a visit to the mission there. It's one of the oldest missions in California, 1770s, I believe. It's going to be a great, great time. And I have a block of rooms on hold for our group at the Carmel Mission Inn. That's our headquarters for the workshop. And this hotel is walking distance to plenty of shops and restaurants. So when we're in between our outings, you can get a bite to eat. You've got the coffee fix will be handled for you. We also have a private meeting space for lab time where in between location visits, we have a comfortable place to gather, work on our photos, talk about the previous outing, talk about the next one. And the last day of the workshop, that space we can do a photo share. I like to do a photo presentation at the end of each workshop. So it's great just seeing how other photographers have interpreted the same location in completely different ways. That's a nice thing about workshops. You get to capture your own photos. You get to see what other people saw, gives you ideas for your next outing. It becomes a nice feedback loop for you to grow as a photographer. Now, this workshop has a maximum of 7 photographers. Once again, small group. We're nimble, and when we travel, we can go in 2 cars, which greatly reduces any parking challenges. Those small roadside pull-offs, they become fair game for a small group. So the Big Sur Experience is in April 8th to 11th, 2024. And again, I recommend you arrive in Carmel on the 7th, the night before, and then leave on the 12th, the day after the workshop finishes, because our workshop is a full 4 days in Big Sur. It's going to be a blast. The cost is $1,595. Again, limited to 7 photographers. I think one of those spaces has already been claimed. So if that one sounds like the workshop for you, head on over to the website and grab your spot. The final workshop I'm hosting for 2024. This one's a big one. This one, it's a big one. It's the trip of a lifetime big. Adventures in Antarctica. Yeah, the 7th continent, the final frontier for many intrepid travelers, Antarctica, and we're doing it in 2024. And this workshop is a 12-day immersive expedition to explore and photograph Antarctica. You will see penguins. You will set foot on the Antarctic Peninsula. And yeah, you will make memories for life. Now, for this kind of workshop, I obviously have to partner with someone, and that partner is Polar Latitudes. Polar Latitudes is a passionate group of polar expedition specialists. All they do is Antarctica, and they run small groups, small boats. Their boats take a maximum of 140 passengers, and the boat can actually handle more than that. They limit it, so they keep the guest count smaller, and the experience is more personal. And that means photographers like us get more opportunities to get off the ship on excursions. That's important. You're traveling a long way to get to Antarctica. You want to maximize your time exploring. Now, I said this is a 12-day expedition. Well, 9 of those are on the ship. You're not on land for a bunch of time. You're not doing a sail-by tour of Antarctica. Oh, look, there's an iceberg. You might see a seabird or something like that. You're getting in and among the Antarctic Peninsula. And the boat itself is great. There's a pair of lounges. We get to gather, talk shop, work on images when we're in between things. It has a sauna, a fitness center, a science lab, 2 kitchens. If the weather cooperates, you can even dine al fresco on one of the decks. It's going to be great. Those sailing days that we have, we'll talk about our shooting techniques as we're heading down, sailing down into the Antarctic Peninsula. Talk about how we're going to approach certain scenes, camera settings, how we'll best work together in a Zodiac so that we can all get great photos. And Polar Latitudes themselves, they host educational sessions during the sail. Everything from the history of Antarctic exploration to scientific studies that are done there. So you get to get a little education, learn a little more about the region that you're in. And then the expedition days. There are 2 excursions on each expedition day. So once we've crossed Drake's Passage and gotten to the Antarctic Peninsula, we have the opportunity to get off the ship twice a day. And this is where that small count, 140 passengers that Polar Latitudes maxes at for their trips, that's where this comes into play. With that small of a passenger count, we can do this double excursion. Our group is either in a Zodiac, cruising around in and among icebergs, seeing landscapes, seeing some wildlife, penguins, seabirds, they'll be out there. Or we're making landfall on the peninsula itself, visiting a full-on penguin colony, taking in more otherworldly landscapes, opportunity for a hike. The complete itinerary is on the workshop webpage, and so is a list of what else is included on this voyage from Polar Latitudes. Your meals on the ship, drinks, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, what's going on in the town of Ushuaia, Argentina, where we embark from. There's a lot in this package here. Now this workshop, this Antarctica workshop, it's limited to 10 participants. 10 is a magic number. With 10, we have our own Zodiac boat, and our group stays together the whole time. I mentioned the ship as a whole will take 140 folks, but our group, just 10 photographers. So when is this workshop happening? Adventures in Antarctica is from November 29th through December 10th, 2024. And booking is done directly with Polar Latitudes. The website they have put up, it'll explain everything. And we also have a personal liaison, Connie, over at Polar Latitudes to help with all the booking, any questions, all the stuff in coordination for how to get your space, what do you need, what type of arrangements are necessary. We have Connie to help us out with all of that. The pricing depends on the cabin that you choose aboard the ship, and the range is anywhere from $8,000 all the way up to $20,000 on the high end if you get that super swanky owner's cabin on the boat. But the average is really around $11,000 to $12,000. But if you book early, you get a 15% early booking discount off that price. So now you're in the $9,000 to $10,000 range for a 12-day adventure in the greatest frontier of the planet. That's not a bad price point. I know this is these types of excursions, they don't come cheaply, but that's why we're starting so early. This is near the end of 2024, and there is time to plan and budget. It's like when you're having to make any major purchase, you plan it out, you budget it, you put away a certain amount of money each month, and you build it up so you can do it by the end of next year. So if you are at all interested in this workshop, and honestly, who wouldn't be interested, right? You can tell in my voice, I'm giddy about doing this workshop. Go check out the workshop page, links in the show notes. And in addition to the itinerary, frequent questions, some notes about travel, and links to all of the details at Polar Latitudes about pricing, the boats, the cabins, I have recorded an informational session I did with Connie from Polar Latitudes to answer people's questions about the workshop. So that recording is there for you to watch as well. And you can always reach out to me. Reach out to Connie with any types of questions. There's buttons on the webpage where it makes it very easy for you to ask your questions to us. So Adventures in Antarctica, November 29th to December 10th, 2024. And what better way to close out the 2024 workshop roster? So let me recap those for you. Bryce Canyon National Park, February 13th to 15th, 2024. The Big Sur Experience, April 8th through 11th, 2024. Adventures in Antarctica, November 29th through December 10th, 2024. Links to all the details are in the show notes, and I truly hope you'll join us on one of these workshops in the coming year. Before I bid you farewell for this episode, I did want to take a moment and thank everyone that supports the show through comments, reviews, shares, and especially those that have asked several questions through the podcast forums or about the podcast. Those have been quite interesting and thought-provoking, and I think some of those will become future podcast episodes. A couple that come to mind is one about what would really prompt me to upgrade my camera equipment. As I've talked about, I'm still using my 7-year-old camera bodies, my Sony A7R2s, and what would be the feature? What would be the thing that would prompt me to move to a new camera system? Short of something just breaking. That's an interesting question. I want to unpack that one more. There was another about how do you determine your own style? What is it where's that point in your photography where you decide or you determine or you realize, I have this style? I think that's an interesting one to talk about too. So thanks for all the questions that are coming in. Never hesitate to ask a question. There's a contact form you can access on my website. Messages come directly to me. There's no robots involved. It's an actual human there. As much as I love AI for my photography, I haven't made Virtual Scott to answer emails just yet. But again, keep those questions coming in. Thanks again for listening. And until next time, my name is Scott Davenport. Have fun. And with new ways of looking at Photoshop subjects. I'm sounding like Sean Connery.